University Christian Church of Austin, Texas, has been anchored at the corner of 21st Street and University Avenue since 1946. Arising from a need to support students at the University of Texas, this faith community formed when a group of World War II veterans returned home eager to use their GI Bill to get an education and to make the world a better place. In the words of Esther Mae Johnston, echoing Dr. Frank Jewett, University Christian Church sits on holy ground. Like the rainbow chalice that has come to symbolize this community, many facets weave together to create a dynamic, inclusive community that actively lives out the love of Jesus Christ through thoughtful worship, compassionate service, and spiritual growth. Our foundation of faith supports fellowship, scholarship, connection, creativity, service, and discipleship.
This is a story of a faithful congregation and inspired leaders creating space for all. University Christian Church emerged from the Texas Bible Chair, an institution tasked with teaching accredited courses on the history and study of religion at the University of Texas. That program at the University of Texas was established on property deeded by Mrs. M.M. Blanks to the Christian Women's Board of Missions in 1904. She was inspired by her attendance at Disciples of Christ conventions at the turn of the 19th century. With the return of servicemen and women from World War II to an overwhelmed Texas Bible Chair, the need for a Disciples of Christ church adjacent to the university was clear. On November the 3rd, 1946, 11 founding members, 17 associate members, and 20 student members held their first official worship service on the porch of the Bible Chair building. Just 3 years later, led by a small group of church leaders they called the Starting Squad, the congregation set out to enlarge their small sanctuary for the third time. The squad included Reverend Lawrence Bash, who had answered the church's call the year before when they had only 46 cents in the treasury, a remarkable act of faith on both sides. They were aided in their endeavor by a newly created Committee of 40. These were interested and influential people who had raised a small building fund for this remodel, but who immediately initiated a larger effort. With many more funds in hand, the church planned to break ground again in 1953. The current sanctuary was finished and dedicated in May 1954. At the dedication, Ann Savage Matthews, a current member, was one of those baptized in the new sanctuary. Thanks to impressive fundraising, the church retired its building debt quickly and shifted more resources to other areas. At this time, the Christian Women Board of Missions began to transfer ownership of the land to the church. Like all buildings, the sanctuary needed updating by 1994. The chancel was modified to be more flexible and provisions made for future additions. The planners of the original sanctuary made provisions for air conditioning, an elevator, and a pipe organ. Air conditioning was added in the 1950s, the elevator in 2003, and the pipe organ in 2006 to create an even more welcoming space. The building now housing University Christian Church stands watch on the edge of the University of Texas Austin campus with arms outstretched to all.
A church is so much more than the space that its building occupies. People in fellowship create a community that bears witness to God's love. The baby boom after World War II was much in evidence during the late 1940s and early 1950s. By 1958, this next generation was thriving in the church. Not only the children enjoyed the community of University Christian Church, the Christian Women's Fellowship nurtured strong bonds among the women and their families. Annual meals at Jeannie Youngblood's home were much anticipated affairs. Serving in ministry isn't all work, as these two performers relax backstage during a Maundy Thursday presentation. These relationships last lifetimes and enrich the entire community. Even when the community can't share the same physical space, it finds ways to share joy. Rooted in the Disciples of Christ tradition and blessed with biblical scholars, University Christian Church is a focal point for religious exploration for students, congregants, and the broader community. A thoughtful approach to the Bible and theology, as well as their applications in life, inform University Christian Church's work. Dr. Frank L. Jewett came to the Texas Bible Chair position and began a tradition of teaching Bible courses in 1905 that continued for 80 years. From 1908 on, these courses were accredited with the University of Texas. A scholar in religious and biblical studies, Dr. Jewett and later Paul Wasnick were also interested in other subjects, attracting students and members with wide educational and professional goals and experience in medicine, law, business, sciences, and other fields. These wide-ranging interests came to characterize the congregation and is reflected in elements of academia included in the stained glass commissioned for the sanctuary. Over the years, several members channeled these interests into a variety of authored books.
Across generations, influences flow through community members to shape today's church. Church camps have been a part of growing up for a very long time. At these camps, young members grow closer to God while connecting with older generations. Esther Mae Johnson, a beloved member of University Christian Church, became acquainted with Dr. Frank Jewett at these camps. She came to understand his drive to create this church and carried it forward. When Dr. Jewett retired in 1946, Paul Wasnick took over the Texas Bible Chair. He recognized that the rapidly growing student Bible study group needed a church aligned to their interests. He spurred the founding of today's church and served unpaid as its first pastor. The church hired Reverend Sisterton as its first paid pastor. Reverend Sisterton realized that he was not a good fit and resigned, which brought Dr. Lawrence Bass to the church. Dr. Bass' faith and vision brought the church to life. Besides offering Bible study, the church provided opportunities for students to hear diverse perspectives. For example, Al Schaaf spoke about his experience as a POW to fellow students at a church-sponsored event. Following Paul Wasnick, Dr. Cox continued the Texas Bible Chair's religious classes from 1958 until a court case in 1987 ended the academic relationship between UT and the Texas Bible Chair. In 2011, after several years of diligent negotiation, member and attorney Bill Hilgers established the legal framework under which UT could have a religious studies department that satisfies the 1987 court case. While neither UCC Austin nor the Texas Bible Chair Foundation teaches religious studies at UT anymore, the church continues to provide opportunities for students and the community at large to consider diverse and challenging perspectives.
Entwined with scholarship, fellowship, and connection, UCC Austin has a long tradition of honoring and expressing God's wonders through art, music, and sculpture. From very early on, UCC has invited UT music students to its chancel and handbell choirs. With choral scholarships, the students gain valuable experience as section leaders while blessing the church with their vocal talents. The church commissioned then Professor Charles Umlauf for several works, including the carved stone arch over the sanctuary entrance, the apostle shields in the chancel, and the stone frieze underneath the great window. For many years, UCC presented elaborate Christmas pageants that highlighted Christmas seasons. Roy Cates' direction of these pageants inspired him to create the Endowment for Creative Ministry in 1981. This endowment enables special presentations with musical and artistic works, or thoughtful lectures or panel discussions. Example presentations include a reenactment of the Last Supper at a Maundy Thursday service in the 1980s, and a lecture by author Matthew Vines in 2016. In 2007, artistic representations of the Disciple of Christ Statement of Belief were commissioned for the Northex. UCC hosts concerts featuring its impressive pipe organ while providing a place for music performers to share their work.
University Christian Church has long looked outward as well as inward. Through service to the local community and the world, the congregation lives out its faith in Christ. Supporting mission work abroad was a large focus in the 1950s and early 1960s, with projects ranging across Japan, Greece, Congo, Puerto Rico, and Paraguay. Locally, the church supports nonprofits and other congregations to reach more in need. In 2003, UCC joined with other university area churches to form the largest food pantry serving in Austin. The congregation volunteers with local organizations combating homelessness and poverty, and by getting sweaty and truly being hands-on. Being next to the university, the church provides support to students who need to know that they are not alone. University Christian Church takes seriously the call of all Christians to grow and serve as disciples, followers of Christ, growing by faith, service, and love of Christ. This tradition goes back to the very beginning. Mrs. M. Blanks got the idea for creating what has become University Christian Church while attending Disciples of Christ conferences, which provided the support and guidance to make her idea a reality. This continued as Dr. Howland took what he learned about ministry and Disciples of Christ to roles at the National City Christian Church in Washington, D.C., and in National Disciples congregations.
While all are called to ministry, some are called to ordained ministry. And UCC has a long tradition of seeking to serve and grow as a faith community. It also reflects a long tradition of sponsoring ordinands. Julie Wood served UCC as a licensed minister and was ordained at UCC in 2006. She went on to serve the Texas Bible Chair Foundation. Rosalind Hogan served UCC as student minister and was ordained in 2007. Likewise, UCC sponsored Jack Knox for ordination in 2009. Topher Indra served as University Christian Church's Minister of Education and went on to be ordained in Scotland in 2021. This was a novel laying on of hands service through a Zoom gathering across the miles, and many of us participated. Most recently, Chelsea McCutcheon, the church's current Minister of Education and Community Engagement, was ordained July 31st, 2021, with a more conventional laying on of hands service in our sanctuary. Woven together, each of these facets adds to the rich tapestry that is the faith community of University Christian Church. Responding to the call to be a movement for wholeness in a fragmented world, University Christian Church extends the grace-filled welcome of Christ to all persons equally, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, class, sexual orientation, political affiliation, or ability. University Christian Church seeks to be a dynamic, inclusive community living out the love of Jesus the Christ through dynamic worship, compassionate service, and spiritual growth. For 75 years it has been so, and God is still calling this church to fruitful ministry. Thanks be to God for UCC's past, present, and future.